Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, and it's time for the ALDA Awards, the Avoid Like Death Awards, where we celebrate the 10 most dismal recordings of the past year. And this year, in addition to awarding the usual scarves, which we'll get to if you haven't seen these awards before, we are going to proceed with an invocation to the evil god Cancrezans, the god of classical music, who, as you know, has issued a sort of classical fatwa against all of us, saying that he's going to destroy all of classical music, but for one work per composer and or one recording per artist, because of the senseless duplication, relentless snobbery, moral musical relativism, and all of the terrible things that the classical music industry does to the medium that it allegedly loves and supports. So if you would bow your heads for a moment in prayer, let us speak to the evil god Cancrezans. He has invited us to pray as follows. You ready? Dude, listen, we're doing your job for you. Instead of you having to wipe out all of classical music, we are here exercising our critical faculties to select the 10 most appalling recordings that ever were issued in the history of humanity for the year 2023 anyway, and we are going to tell the universe to try and elevate the level of taste, of intelligence, of critical faculties, of love and care and concern for the wonderful legacy that is classical music, so that you, oh great Cancrezans, do not have to exercise your cranky and kind of annoying threat to get rid of all the stuff that we like to listen to anyway, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Because don't we have a right to do that? I mean, really? Seriously? So thank you, O Lord. And without further ado, here we have the ALDAs from 2023. Amen. Okay, there you go. Let's start. First, we begin, as always, with the white scarf of irredeemable Chutzpah, for recordings that you just can't believe these people had the nerve to issue, because they're so bad. I mean, they're just so ridiculous, so completely unnecessary. I mean, I side with Cancrezans on some of these things, because we begin with Schumann, the complete symphonies, featuring the Staatskapelle Berlin and Daniel Barenboim on Deutsche Grammophon. Now, Barenboim, you may recall, in his callow youth, recorded a complete Schumann cycle with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, which was quite good. And it contained, among other things, the absolutely most volcanically exciting recording of the concert shtuck for four horns that anybody ever conceived. And it's just magnificent. And the rest of the symphonies were quite good. I mean, they really were. Then, with this same orchestra, for Warner, he did the complete Schumann symphonies around the same time as he made his extraordinary Beethoven cycle with these forces, and it's a great Schumann cycle. It's clearly one of the great ones. It has that same flexibility, the ability to breathe and phrase, and it's exciting, and it's texturally sensitive. It deals with all the problems of Schumann's orchestration quite beautifully. It's absolutely lovely, and it's gorgeously recorded. And then, for reasons unknown, quite similar to reasons he redid his Bruckner cycle with these people. I mean, his third or fourth Bruckner cycle. You know, Barenboim seems to think, here's the irredeemable chutzpah part, that anything that he seems to feel in the moment is worthy of being preserved. Well, this Schumann cycle is as lousy as the other one was terrific, not because he's completely disintegrated as a human being, although he kind of has as a pianist. It's because it's totally, completely unnecessary and demonstrably less interesting when you can make an A-B comparison with the same works, with the same orchestra done a few years before. And Deutsche Grammophon, in their witless, lemming-like need to follow wherever these people lead, and probably it's all getting subsidized and paid for by somebody else anyway, decides to release this garbage. So that's number one. For the white scarf of irredeemable chutzpah, the nerve to do a third Schumann cycle. Like, we need this. Horrible, horrible. Cancrozans is fuming. You can see his like little beady eyes glowing red. Next, oh gosh. Well, as you know, we're coming up to the Bruckner year. And leading up to the Bruckner year, I mean, there's been so much bad Bruckner. There's been some great Bruckner, too. Let us not forget. But, and we've talked about that in the Cola Awards, but the bad Bruckner, it far outnumbers the great Bruckner. And Bruckner 5, the toughest Bruckner symphony to pull off with the Vienna Philharmonic, and Christian Thielemann, who, this is his second or third Bruckner cycle. Why would anyone have the right to do multiple Bruckner cycles within just a few years? I understand someone like Joachim did one like in the 50s and early 60s, then one in the like 80s, 70s and 80s, when technology was better, recording was better, it was a different orchestra, he was different as an interpreter, maybe a little bit. I mean, okay. But Thielemann, who is the apotheosis of Kapellmeisterish, uninteresting incompetence everywhere but as an operatic conductor. There he can do great things. He can. He has his place. He has his Fach, as they say auf Deutsch. But Bruckner, I mean, he just does it because he thinks he should. He has no feeling for it. He doesn't know what to do with it. He makes the Vienna Philharmonic, an orchestra which should be able to play Bruckner in its sleep. Sounds like it's playing Bruckner in its sleep. With clotted textures and dreary tempos and flabby rhythms and crappy recorded sound on top of that too. Really astonishing. Astonishingly awful. So he definitely earns the white scarf of irredeemable chutzpah just for continuing to do the same crappy stuff over and over and over and over and over. Then, finally, for the white scarf of irredeemable chutzpah, Mendelssohn's Italian Symphony in 2 versions of the same work. The original way he wrote it, and then the revised version, which, he revised it. And we actually play the original version more often than the revised version, I think, or one or the other. I don't even care. And you certainly aren't going to care when you hear Jordi Savall. With the Concert des Nations on Alia Vox, doing repertoire he has no business touching. He has nothing whatsoever to say. These performances are simply clinics. They are clinics in certain theories of original instrument performance, dressed up as artistic music making. It is an embarrassment, a blot on this guy's career. And it's the same old story. It's the classic tale of artistic chutzpah, because he thinks he can do anything. I mean, he can do anything he wants. He has that right, obviously. He can do it, but to produce it and issue it and make claims as to its certain idiomatic authenticity or rightness or something, and then to give us 2 dreary versions of the same piece, as if this matters, as if this is important. It just, there's so many things wrong with this from an ideological and aesthetic point of view that it's impossible to even get into it in any detail. All I can tell you is that Cancrozans would eliminate Jordi Savall and everything he's done, which would be terrible, just on the basis of this, and maybe his Missa Solemnis. Oh God, we're not going to go there. So, there's the possibility that Savall and his legacy in early music, all the creative work he did, all the loving presentation and historical study and whatnot, there was so much that he did that was a revelation to all of us. And it's such a tragedy that because of irredeemable chutzpah, he is diluting the value of all of the great things he's done by pretending to be able to do something similar with basic repertory works that have been played magnificently since the dawn of the recorded era. I mean, if that's not irredeemable chutzpah, I don't know what is. Knock it off, Savall. You're wasting your time. You've got to be able to find stuff to do that's worthy of your talents, not this. Okay, so that's the white scarf of irredeemable chutzpah. Next, we come to the scarlet scarf of shame. Oh, yes, stuff that's just, oh, it's so embarrassing. Totally embarrassing. Excuse me, I need that. So, the Scarlet Scarf of Shame goes to 3 richly deserving recipients, beginning with this marvelous disc of violin sonatas, marvelously putrid, I mean, by Beethoven, Schumann, and Franck, featuring Martha Argerich, yes, Martha Argerich, and Renaud Capuçon, violin, on Deutsche Grammophon. Now, Martha Argerich, of course, is another one of those artists who has reached the Empyrean level where everything she does gets recorded. People just follow her around with microphones, hoping that she'll tinkle the ivories and then Deutsche Grammophon can release it as an event. And there's also like live stuff. And I mean, you know, she's got this epic discography of the same pieces played over and over and over and over, much as Barenboim did. And of course, Argerich and Barenboim have made a couple of recordings, one of which, the Bartók Sonata for, 2 pianos and percussion, was also richly deserving of the Scarlet Scarf of Shame award. Horrible, horrible disc. Anyway, this is just as bad. First of all, Argerich has recorded the Franck Sonata 5 times, 6 times, 10 times, 50 times, who knows? She knows it in her sleep. And again, she's playing it in her sleep here. She's at the point where I think the music holds very little interest for her because she's just noodling with it. There's all the excitement, the firmness, the spontaneity that usually characterizes her performances is totally gone from this version of the Franck and the Beethoven and the Schumann. No, but particularly the Franck. It's particularly egregious. And Capuçon is a violinist of just no particular interest. The way that he's been promoted completely baffles me entirely because he doesn't have a particularly lovely tone. He doesn't seem to have any particular insight into the music. Sure, he's talented, he's got the notes, he plays well enough, but these performances are gray from the violinist's point of view, just bland, and from the pianist's point of view, just distracted. I mean, my goodness, it sounds like she took a few pills or something and is just sort of noodling along, giving him something to play against, and he's not even taking advantage of that. It's just, it's a bad record, a really bad record from people who really should have done enormously better, especially Argerich. I mean, she should be ashamed of herself. Yes, Capuçon, well, maybe he doesn't know any better. Next, Handel. Water music and music for the royal fireworks with the Baroque, the B' rock orchestra, under Dmitry Sinkovsky on Pentatone. How do you blow the royal fireworks music and the water music? How do you do that, you may wonder? How does a period instrument group do that? Thus, richly deserving the Scarlet Scarf of Shame. Well, what you do is you take this pint-sized little orchestrette and you play the music in this diminutive, teeny tiny, absolutely inhibited, way that obliterates the whole concept of music written for outdoor performance. The emphasis on glorious wind and brass sonorities, the fabulous sunny tunes, the rollicking hornpipe rhythms, the water music, the fabulous drums and percussion and 9 horns and trumpets and 20 oboes and bassoons. And the fireworks music, you just make it sound like elevator music. And that's what they do. I have never heard more uninteresting, lame, unidiomatic performances of these pieces, interpretations that totally miss the point, that are so uninteresting, unfestive, uncelebratory, that they earn the Scarlet Scarf of Shame, for sure. And last in the Scarlet Scarf of Shame department, oh my God, this was a shocker. Absolutely. It's Daphnis and Chloe by Ravel on Chandos with John Wilson and the Sinfonia of London. Now, you may recall John Wilson and the Sinfonia of London earned a COLA award. I keep on listing award for their stunning complete version of Oklahoma. And, Wilson seems to be in one of those difficult situations where he's excellent at film music. He's excellent at doing some unusual repertoire. His English string music discs were beautiful. He's done some good things. His Copeland wasn't even bad. But he is now being used by Chandos to do blockbuster, glittering, orchestral, stunning sound fests. And he's doing it with a studio pickup orchestra, with sonics that are at best mediocre. And this is being billed as the second coming of great, stunning, blockbuster, technical, musical achievement by much of the English press and some others. And it is absolutely a desecration, I say, of moral responsibility and a desecration of the altar of great music to push these people as something fabulous when they are at best average. At best. It's a joke. And his Daphnis and Chloe, for anybody who knows Daphnis and Chloe, is dismal. Absolutely dismal. His handling of tempo, transitions, the balance between the orchestra and the choir, it's all messed up. And those of the critical fraternity, who I really would not shed a tear if Cancrozans wiped them out like tomorrow, they're saying, oh, well, it's different, and it's good because it's different. Well, you can like things that are different for the sake of the fact that they're different. But that's not a positive quality. It's simply a factual observation. Something is different because it's different. That's it. A is different from B. It's a demonstrative fact. Is it good? We are called to a higher level of musical discernment, to be able to know something of what the composer intended and whether or not these interpreters care or bother to realize it. And if you have a score of Daphnis and Chloe and you listen to this Wilson performance, you can see he's not doing anything that Ravel is suggesting. And Ravel was not stupid. Now, there are times when you could do things completely opposite to what the composer intends, and they can be wonderful. The composer does not always know all of the possibilities latent in the work. They only have their preferences as well. But their word deserves an awful lot of weight. And it particularly deserves weight in basic concepts, such as the relationship of tempos between sections, or whether or not the parts marked fortissimo should be louder than the parts that are not marked fortissimo. I mean, there are basic elemental facts of musical performance that go completely by the wayside in this version of this ballet. And aside from that, we have all of the comparisons. We have all the great recordings of the past, both recent and not so recent. And this performance comes up short, no matter how you judge it. And the fact that there are people out there who don't or won't hear that and will not tell people the truth is absolutely vile and shameful. It's shameful not just for the miserableness of this particular performance of Daphnis and Chloe, but for what it says about the classical music critical fraternity, and frankly, many listeners too, that they could listen to this thing and find it acceptable. That's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. It's what gets Cancrozans all steamed up. You could see the smoke coming out of his ears, So yes, Daphnis and Chloe gets the Scarlet Scarf of Shame. Next, well, hold it. That's the Scarlet Scarf of Shame. Now comes, oh my, yes, the Taupe Scarf of Turpitude, for performances which are in every way musically depraved. Absolutely depraved. Now we're dealing with the bottomless pit of moral sin and depravity and senseless musical desecration and perversion and all of those good things. So the taupe scarf of turpitude goes first to the big box, Roger Norrington, the complete useless Drek recordings. Yes, well, that's not what it was called. It was called the complete Erato recordings. Now, this was amusing in so many different ways because, first of all, he made no recordings for Erato. Not one. His recordings were all made for EMI, but EMI was purchased by Warner, and Warner has all these classical sub-labels like Teldec and Erato and all the, what. So they had to stuff it somewhere, and they decided to stuff it on Erato. So they have his complete Erato recordings where he sets forth in eloquent musical detail all of the things that make him the abomination of the second half of the 20th century in the world of classical music. Now, there could be others. There could be, Massimiliano Cobra and his crew. There's Theodore Karensis, but he's 21st century. But we're talking about a guy who had a major label behind him, who was the conductor of the Schutz Choir, who did some nice things with early music, who very opportunistically and, in my view, completely cynically decided that he could make a career because it was the thing, especially in the UK. And when every major label was looking for its own proprietary period instrument group, and they all had them, right? There was, the Academy of Ancient Music, Loiselier had its group, and Archive had its groups. They had some German ones, and they had Pinnock and his crew. And then we have EMI, which wanted the what was it, the Taverner Consort or whatever it was with Andrew Parrott, and this group, the London Classical Players with Roger Norrington, doing more classical repertoire, not Baroque repertoire. His joke, his farce, his whatever, was to do standard big romantic pieces and apply the wholly conjectural Baroque aesthetic as though time had frozen around 1750, and everything that you allegedly thought people could do back then should be done to pieces written in 1850 or later, up to the 20th century. And in order to do that, Norrington adduced to himself, acquired an entire scholarly apparatus consisting of horrid, awful, wretched scholarship and intellectual bullshit, and he applied that to Beethoven and Brahms and Verdi and Berlioz and all these people. The results are in this box. And it is. I'm saving this box. I may use it as a doorstop, but I'm saving it because it is a testament to everything that can go wrong in the morally relativistic world of period instrument interpretation. It's just grotesque, as is everything he did later, just about, except for that one terrific Beethoven cycle he did in Stuttgart, where the credit goes to the orchestra for following his interpretive strictures perfectly. It's an amazingly realized Beethoven cycle. People got upset with me because I said I gave it a 10. But what I said was, of its type, for what it is, it's remarkable, and it remains so. Do I like it? Not especially. But here, we're not dealing with that. We're not dealing with realization at the highest levels of interpretive, of technical mastery, of orchestras that can really do it. We're talking about another pickup group, the same pickup musicians who formed all of the other British early music ensembles, just doing this guy's version of period stuff, which not only has to sound different from what modern orchestras do, because anything that's different is inherently correct in the period instrument movement, but it has to be different from what all the other period instrument people are doing. So it's doubly different, or trebly different, octuply different, and bad in every way that it's different. So there we have it, the complete Erato recordings, an absolutely grotesque example of musical turpitude. Next, Holst, The Planets, with Daniel Harding. Here we're going to have with the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra. Here we're going to have no argument whatsoever, because everyone I know, of you and you folks too, when I talked about this, who've heard this performance, agrees that it is the most horrid version you've ever heard in your life of The Planets. You know, The Planets is not, I mean, it should work with Harding, because Harding is, as we know, he's a very cold interpreter, generally speaking. He's a cool customer. And The Planets is not about human feeling particularly, although it contains some wonderfully luscious melodies, some cool beauty. But Holst himself was a bit of a cool customer. You know, he wasn't someone who was gushing with romantic passion. So you would think that a piece of music that is essentially a study in rhythm and orchestral color would suit Harding. And it doesn't. Oh my God, it's the most lame, flabby, colorless, tedious performance of The Planets, a piece which really ought to be almost foolproof. I mean, as long as you get the rhythms right, it's going to work. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. What a disaster this thing was. What a shameful exercise. And what were these people thinking? What was Harding thinking? What does he think his job is? You know, I mean, he just crapped all over the piece. It's unbelievable. So yes, the taupe scarf of turpitude definitely goes to that disaster. And finally, oh wow, yes, Bruckner 7. Another Bruckner. We're going to get a lot of Bruckner, folks. You just have to get ready for it, because next year is going to be wild. Trust me. I may have to do a separate ALDAs just for Bruckner recordings. The Bruckner 7 with the London Symphony Orchestra and Simon Rattle. Now, Rattle has recorded a lot of Bruckner. I mean, given the fact that he has no business touching Bruckner. He did some in Berlin. He did the completed version of the Ninth, which was not terrible, which actually was kind of interesting for the way that it made the finale seem to be a logical outgrowth of, you know, what had come before. He did that, of course, by diminishing what had come before to make that crappy finale sound more significant. But okay, you know, I understood the concept. It wasn't bad. But he's been doing these theoretical original editions of Bruckner symphonies created by Benjamin Kors, the late Benjamin Kors, who was a lovely guy and absolutely insane, and who is, you know, spending his life being a thorn in the side of the other Bruckner people who are producing endless critical editions of this stuff, by producing critical editions that were critical of the other critical editions. And the key, of course, is not that these are critical editions that are critical of the other critical editions and that are critically critical of the critical editions that came out before, but that Rattle conducts them so boringly, because it doesn't matter whether it's a critical edition. What matters is whether the conductor has some feeling for the music and plays it with enthusiasm, with life and vigor and passion, and even with Bruckner, yes, passion. These performances are so lame. They're completely, totally limp. Clinical versions of critical editions, maybe, I don't know. But boring beyond belief. Absolutely snooze fests. And for that reason, this awful, dreary, dull Bruckner 7th richly deserves the taupe scarf of musical turpitude. Oh my God, incredible. So that's the taupe scarf. And now we come to the pièce de résistance. Yes, the black scarf of lingering stench. Here it is, the black scarf of lingering stench, a performance so horrible, so terrible, that it actually bursts the bonds of the merely audible and transgresses into the olfactory. Yeah, and that thing is a recent issue, actually. You know, I go back a whole year for these things, and, you know, I make ongoing lists as we go, but this thing came out, and it just wiped away the competition. It's the complete Beethoven symphonies with Zubinmeda and the Orchestra del Maggio Musicale Fiorentino on dynamic. Oh, was this sad. I mean, it was sad. I have to be honest about it because I was rooting for it. We talked about it in the video. I was hoping that Mehta would pull himself together and do a dynamite Beethoven cycle because he was capable of it. And he never had the chance. And he never had the chance for a lot of reasons, some of which I think involved prejudice against the fact that he was not of European origin and the pigeonhole that he found himself working in. And it was a shame because I think he deserved a Beethoven cycle. But it's not this one. No. I've heard since from a lot of you folks and from others that he's ill. I feel terrible about that he's not his old self. Well, that's for sure. Just listen to these things. And these live performances they're just wretched. I mean, the orchestra is second rate. He should have had a great orchestra, one that could have done it without him, frankly, rather than these people who seem to be learning the music note by note as he plays it, and the interpretations which are just leaden and completely devoid of any kind of interest or insight or vibrancy. The music is it's tragic. It really is tragic. I mean, that's the answer. And so, I feel bad awarding this thing the black scarf of lingering stench, but the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, that somehow Mehta, maybe he didn't care, but he approved it, or he had no choice, and someone else approved it, and there's a record label that issued it, and they are promoting it. I mean, by issuing it, no one's promoting anything these days, but they're promoting it. They are attempting to present this as what I regard as the culmination of a great conductor's life's work, and it's a disaster. It's a disaster, the stench of which, unfortunately, because it has been preserved, will linger, and will linger in perpetuity as a disgusting brown stain on the legacy of an otherwise fine musician. So yes, I have to end on a depressing down note. I wish it weren't so, but the black scarf of lingering stench goes to the Zubin Mehta Beethoven cycle, which is just, I don't even want to wear the scarf anymore. It gives me the willies, really. So there you have it, my friends. The ALDA Awards, Avoid Like Death Awards for 2023. Performances that you should run away from, screaming if you see it coming towards you. Turn and vamoose in the opposite direction. Or, if you're like perversely curious, check them out. I mean, one of the things that we've always acknowledged is that there's no such thing as bad publicity. And so winning an ALDA Award may just as well generate more interest than winning a COLA award. In fact, I know that's true because I see the traffic reports on the ALDAs versus the COLAs, and people are far more interested in what's horrible than they are in what's great. I wonder what that says about our classical music culture and what Cankrazans would have to say about that too. Be nice. We did this for you. Remember, oh great Cankrazans, evil god of classical music, we're doing your job. So just sit back and let us do the work. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me in 2023. Here's looking forward to 2024, which will bring us many, many, many more great recordings, and, because we all love them, many, many, many more absolutely wretched, appalling recordings, which we will do our duty, our sacred duty, and bring as much attention to as we possibly can. Take care. Happy New Year. All the best for 2024.